Daeho stood in the observation deck of Salvage Station 47, watching the Valtrine warship dock with mechanical precision. The ship was massive, all sharp angles and dark metal that seemed to drink in the light from the nearby nebula. He had seen plenty of alien vessels in his 5 years as a salvage pilot, but Valtrine ships always made his stomach tight. They looked like weapons even when they were standing still. "You ready for this?" Taeyang asked from behind him. His friend and business partner leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "These lizards don't usually come out here for friendly chats. They're paying triple rates for the salvage rights," Daeho said. He kept his voice steady, professional. "We need the money. The station repairs won't pay for themselves." Taeyang grunted but said nothing more. They both knew the real reason they took jobs like this. Money was always tight on the edge of civilized space. You dealt with whoever showed up, even if they gave you nightmares. The airlock hissed open 20 minutes later. Daeho waited in the conference room, a plain metal box with a table and chairs that had seen better days. The lighting was deliberately bright. Humans liked it that way, and it made most aliens uncomfortable. Small advantages mattered in negotiations. The Valtrine delegation entered in single file. There were 4 of them, each standing over 7 feet tall. Their scales were a deep green that shifted to brown in the light. They moved with predatory grace, every step measured and controlled. The leader wore ceremonial armor marked with symbols Daeho didn't recognize. Behind him came 2 soldiers in standard combat gear, and then the 4th. Daeho's breath caught in his throat. The 4th Valtrine was a female. Judging by the slightly smaller frame and the crest that ran down her spine, she wore armor that was clearly human-made. Not just human-made, but Earth Defense Force issue. The plates were scratched and dented from combat, but they had been maintained with obvious care. And there, on the left shoulder guard, were 3 parallel gouges, deep cuts that ran diagonally across the metal. Daeho knew those marks. He had watched them being made. His eyes moved without his permission, tracking across the armor. The chest plate had a welded patch over the heart, rough but functional. The belt had extra pouches attached, the kind soldiers added when standard issue wasn't enough. And hanging from that belt, small enough that most people would miss it, was a charm. A tiny metal lotus flower no bigger than a thumbnail. The world seemed to tilt sideways. "Shall we begin?" the Valtrine leader said. His voice came through a translator device, turning his hissing speech into flat, emotionless words. Daeho didn't hear him. He was staring at the lotus charm, at the initials barely visible on its surface. HY. He had given that charm to Hana 3 years and 4 months ago. It was the last thing he had given her before she deployed to Proxima Ridge. Before she died at Proxima Ridge. "Human," the leader said, louder this time. "Are you prepared to negotiate?" Daeho forced his eyes up, forced his face into something resembling calm. "Yes, sorry, long day." The words came out automatically, the kind of meaningless sounds people made when they were pretending to be present. But his mind was screaming. That armor was Hana's. He would bet his life on it. The modifications, the damage patterns, the charm. She had customized every piece of that armor herself. She had spent hours in the workshop, welding and grinding and adjusting until it fit her perfectly. She had been particular about her gear in a way that made other soldiers laugh. But it had kept her alive through a dozen battles, until it hadn't. Daeho went through the motions of negotiation. He heard himself talking about salvage rights and territory boundaries and payment schedules. The Valtrine leader did most of the talking. The 2 soldiers stood silent and motionless, and the female in Hana's armor watched Daeho with eyes that glowed faintly yellow in the bright lights. She noticed him staring. Of course she did. He was being obvious, unprofessional. But he couldn't stop looking at that armor, at that charm, at the impossible reality standing 3 meters away from him. The female Valtrine tilted her head slightly. It might have been curiosity. It might have been threat assessment. Her lipless mouth curved in what could have been a smile, if you ignored the rows of sharp teeth. "Your human is distracted, Commander Rolth," she said. Her voice was different from the leader's, rougher with an edge that the translator couldn't quite smooth out. "Perhaps he finds our presence unsettling." "Many humans do," the commander replied without looking at Daeho. "They lack the strength to face warriors directly." Daeho should have let it go. Should have stayed quiet, finished the negotiation, gotten them off the station, but his mouth opened anyway. "I was a Marine," he said. "Earth Defense Force, 5 years, 3 deployments. I've faced plenty." The female's eyes brightened. Were you? She stepped forward, moving away from her position against the wall. The commander didn't stop her. What unit? 7th Rangers. Heavy assault. Proxima sector? Deho's heart hammered against his ribs. Yes. Then perhaps we have fought each other, human. She said it casually, like commenting on the weather. I have killed many of your 7th Rangers. They died well. The room was very quiet. Taeyang had gone still in the corner, his hand drifting toward the weapon he kept hidden under his jacket. The 2 Valtrine soldiers shifted their weight, ready for violence. Deho made himself breathe, made himself think. That was a long time ago, he said carefully. The war is over. For now, the female said. But she stepped back, returning to her place. The tension in the room eased slightly. The negotiation continued. Deho managed to focus enough to get through it. They agreed on terms, shook hands in the human fashion that the Valtrine found amusing, and set a schedule for the salvage operation. It took another hour. Every minute of it, Deho felt the weight of that armor like a physical presence. As the delegation prepared to leave, the female paused at the door. She looked back at Deho, her glowing eyes meeting his directly. Then deliberately she reached down and touched the lotus charm with one clawed finger. The gesture was brief, almost casual. But it was aimed at him, he was certain of it. Then she was gone, following her commander back to their ship. Taeyang exhaled slowly once the airlock sealed. What the hell was that about? Deho couldn't answer. He was still staring at the empty doorway, his mind trying to process what he had seen. That armor, that charm. The way she had touched it, like she knew he would be watching. Hana had died 3 years ago. Her body was never recovered, lost somewhere in the chaos of Proxima Ridge. The EDF had sent him a formal letter and a folded flag and a list of her personal effects. The armor hadn't been on that list. It had been marked as destroyed in combat, but it wasn't destroyed. It was here on a Valtrine warrior, in perfect condition except for damage that Deho recognized from battles he remembered. Deho, Taeyang said, louder. Are you okay? That armor, Deho said quietly. The female was wearing human armor. Yeah, I noticed. Probably looted it from a battlefield. They do that sometimes. No. Deho shook his head. That was specific armor. That was Lieutenant Hana Yoon's armor. I'm sure of it. Taeyang stared at him. Hana's been dead for 3 years. I know. Deho turned away from the airlock, his hands clenched into fists. I know she's dead, but that armor is hers, and I'm going to find out how that alien got it. He walked out of the conference room without waiting for a response. His mind was already racing ahead, making plans, considering possibilities. Hana was gone. He had accepted that, had mourned her, had learned to live with the empty space she left behind. But her armor was out there, on an alien warrior who smiled with too many teeth and touched a lotus charm like it meant something. And Deho needed to know why. Sleep didn't come that night. Deho lay in his quarters staring at the ceiling, watching shadows from passing ships move across the metal panels. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that armor. The scratches, the charm, the way the alien had touched it like she was sending him a message. At 400 hours, he gave up trying to rest. He went to his office and activated his old military access codes. They should have expired years ago, but the EDF's bureaucracy moved slowly. Sometimes passwords stayed active long after people retired. He got lucky. The system let him in. Deho pulled up everything he could find about the Battle of Proxima Ridge. Official reports, casualty lists, tactical analyses. He had read most of it before, in the dark months after Hana's death when he was looking for answers that didn't exist. But he read it all again with new eyes. 17 soldiers had been listed as missing in action. Not killed, not wounded, missing. Their bodies were never recovered from the battlefield. The official explanation was that the Valtrine had used orbital bombardment during their retreat. The missing soldiers had been vaporized, along with 3 square kilometers of the combat zone. Deho had believed that explanation before. Now he wasn't so sure. He dug deeper, following references and cross-checking reports. Most of the files were standard military documentation. But buried in the tactical analysis section, he found something odd, a note from an intelligence officer about unusual Valtrine behavior during the battle. The aliens had committed ground forces to several positions that had no strategic value. They had held those positions just long enough to secure prisoners, then retreated under heavy fire. Prisoners. The word appeared 3 times in the report. Then the document ended abruptly, marked with a classification stamp that Daeho's access codes couldn't bypass. "What were you doing?" he muttered to the empty room. "What did you want with prisoners?" A notification pinged on his screen. "Incoming message encrypted." Daeho frowned and opened it carefully. It was from Borum, an information broker he had worked with before. They weren't exactly friends, but they had an understanding. Daeho paid well, and Borum asked fewer questions than most. The message was brief. "Heard you met some Valtrine yesterday. Heard you were interested in their gear. I might have information. Meet me at the usual place." Daeho deleted the message and stood up. The usual place was a bar called the Fractured Comet, 3 levels down in the station's entertainment sector. It was the kind of establishment where people went when they didn't want to be remembered. Perfect for Borum's line of work. He found her in a corner booth nursing a drink that glowed faintly blue. Borum was small for a human, barely reaching 5 feet, but she had the kind of presence that made people give her space. Her eyes were sharp behind dark glasses she never removed, even in dim lighting. "You look terrible," she said as Daeho slid into the seat across from her. "I didn't come here for commentary." "Fair enough." Borum pushed a data chip across the table. "You want to know about Valtrine salvage operations. Specifically why they take human equipment from battlefields. How did you know that? I make it my business to know things." She tapped the chip with one finger. "This is everything I could find about Valtrine activity near human combat zones over the last 5 years. It's not pretty." Daeho picked up the chip, feeling its weight. "How much?" 2,000 credits. "And you didn't get this from me?" "Done." He transferred the payment from his personal account. Borum's eyes flickered as she confirmed the transaction. Then she leaned back in her seat. "Word of advice," she said quietly. "Whatever you're looking for, maybe don't find it. The Valtrine don't just take equipment, Daeho. They take people, and the ones who come back aren't the same." "Come back? From where? That's the question, isn't it?" Borum finished her drink and stood up. "Be careful. Some stones are better left unturned." She left without another word. Daeho sat alone in the booth, the data chip heavy in his hand. Around him, the bar's other patrons laughed and talked and pretended to have normal lives. He envied them. Back in his quarters, Daeho loaded the chip into his terminal. The files were extensive, compiled from dozens of sources. Intelligence reports, merchant testimonies, mercenary debriefings. Borum had been thorough. The pattern became clear after an hour of reading. Wherever the Valtrine fought humans, they conducted specialized raids. Small teams would penetrate defensive positions, capture specific targets, and extract under cover of heavy weapons fire. The targets were always soldiers, always alive, always taken back to Valtrine ships. Most of the captured soldiers were declared killed in action. Their bodies were never found. The few who escaped or were later recovered spoke about research facilities, medical procedures, things that didn't make sense. The reports were dismissed as trauma-induced hallucinations, but there were too many of them. Too many similar stories from people who had never met each other. Daeho found references to modified Valtrine warriors appearing in combat zones. Warriors who fought differently than standard soldiers. Warriors who seemed to know human tactics, human weaknesses. Warriors who won battles they should have lost. And there was information about HFY, the female warrior he had met. She was a champion in the Valtrine combat rings, undefeated in 43 consecutive battles. She had appeared suddenly 3 years ago, unknown and unranked, and fought her way to the top with ruthless efficiency. 3 years ago. Right after Proxima Ridge, Daeho's hands were shaking. He forced himself to keep reading. There was a video file attached to HFY's profile, footage from one of her arena fights. He almost didn't watch it. Part of him didn't want to know, but he opened the file anyway. The video quality was poor, recorded from the stands of what looked like a massive amphitheater. 2 figures stood in the center of a sandy arena. HFY and another Valtrine, both wearing minimal armor. The fight began with a blast of sound that the recording's audio couldn't quite capture. HFY moved like liquid death. She was fast, impossibly fast for something her size. But it wasn't just speed. It was the way she moved, the angles she chose. The feints and counters, Daeho had seen those moves before. He had trained with someone who fought exactly like that. The video ended with HFY standing over her defeated opponent, one clawed foot on their chest. The crowd roared approval. Kresheva raised both arms in victory and the camera zoomed in on her face. On her eyes, those glowing yellow eyes that looked almost human in their intensity. Daeho closed the file. He sat in the dark, his mind racing through possibilities. None of them made sense. All of them were horrifying. A message notification appeared on his screen. Anonymous sender. Routed through a dozen relay points to hide its origin. Daeho stared at it for a long moment before opening it. The message contained a single line of text. The armor isn't the only thing she's wearing. No signature. No explanation. Just those 9 words that turned Daeho's blood to ice. He tried to trace the message, but it disappeared from his system as soon as he read it. Like it had never existed at all. Daeho stood up and paced his small quarters. His military training told him to report this. Contact EDF intelligence, file a formal inquiry. Let the proper authorities investigate. But his instincts, honed by years of combat and survival, told him that would accomplish nothing. Whatever was happening, it was big enough to be buried in classified files. Big enough that information brokers spoke in careful whispers. Big enough that someone had sent him an anonymous warning. He needed to confront Kresheva directly. He needed answers that no amount of research would provide, and he needed them before the Valtrine delegation completed their salvage operation and disappeared back into deep space. Daeho pulled up the station's docking logs. The Valtrine ship was scheduled to depart in 4 days. They were conducting surveys of the salvage zones, marking targets, preparing for the actual recovery operations. Standard procedure, 4 days to find the truth. He sent a message to Taeyang. I need to travel. Cover for me at the station. Taeyang's reply came back immediately. Where are you going? Threshold station. The Valtrine delegation is stopping there next. Are you insane? Probably. Daeho started packing a travel bag. But I need to do this. This is about that armor, isn't it? About Hana. Daeho paused, his hands resting on a folded shirt. Yes, she's dead, brother. You know that. I know. But something isn't right. I can feel it. There was a long silence. Then be careful. And come back in one piece. I'll try. Daeho finished packing and booked passage on a transport leaving in 6 hours. He had just enough time to gather a few more supplies and review what he knew about Threshold Station. It was neutral territory, controlled by no single government or species. The perfect place for questionable business and even more, questionable people. It was also the last place anyone would look for a human trying to challenge a Valtrine warrior to single combat. As Daeho sealed his quarters and headed for the docking bay, he touched the pocket where he kept his own copy of Hana's photo. The image was 3 years old now, faded from being carried everywhere. She was smiling in the picture, caught mid-laugh at something he had said. She looked alive and strong and completely herself. He wondered what she would think of what he was about to do. Probably call him an idiot, probably be right, but he was going to do it anyway. Threshold Station was bigger than Daeho remembered. The main hub stretched for kilometers. A chaotic mix of architectural styles from 100 different species. Ships came and went constantly, creating a steady stream of traffic that the station's control systems managed with ruthless efficiency. Finding the Valtrine delegation wasn't difficult. They had taken an entire section of the diplomatic quarter, their presence marked by heavy security and the distinctive smell of their ships. Daeho watched from a distance, studying the patterns of guards and the routines they followed. He needed to get Kresheva alone, or at least away from her commander. Challenging her in front of the entire delegation would create political complications he couldn't afford. The solution came on his 2nd day of surveillance. The Valtrine had access to one of the station's combat training facilities. Kresheva went there every morning, always alone, always for exactly 2 hours. She was disciplined in a way that made his plan possible. Daeho spent the rest of that day learning everything he could about Valtrine honor customs. Most of it came from public databases and cultural guides. The Valtrine were a warrior culture, built around concepts of strength and personal combat. They respected courage even in their enemies, especially in their enemies, and they couldn't refuse a formal challenge, not without losing face so severe it would damage their social standing permanently. On the 3rd day, Daeho went to the training facility an hour before Kresheva usually arrived. He paid for private access to one of the combat rooms and waited. His heart hammered in his chest, but his hands were steady. He had been in worse situations. He had faced death before, But this felt different. This felt personal in a way combat had never been. HFY arrived precisely on time. She wore training clothes that looked strange on her reptilian frame, all function and no decoration. She stopped when she saw Dae-ho waiting in the center of the room. Human, she said. Her translator rendered the word without emotion, but there was something in the tone underneath it. Recognition, maybe. Or curiosity. You are the salvage pilot from the station. My name is Dae-ho Kim, he said. He kept his voice level, formal. I come to issue challenge. HFY's eyes brightened. She stepped fully into the room, letting the door seal behind her. Challenge? You wish to fight me? I wish for answers. Valtrine honor law says if I win, you must provide them. And if you lose, then I die. That's the price. She tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. What answers could be worth your life, Dae-ho Kim? The armor you wear. Where did you get it? Something changed in her posture. It was subtle, but Dae-ho had learned to read body language during his military years. She had expected many possible questions. This wasn't one of them. You know this armor? She asked carefully. It belonged to someone important to me. I want to know how you came to possess it. HFY was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed. It was a harsh sound, more bark than humor. You would die for knowledge about armor? This is very human, very foolish. Do you accept the challenge or not? Of course I accept. She moved to the center of the room, taking a fighting stance. You are brave, Dae-ho Kim, or you are insane. I have not decided which. Can I ask for time to prepare? 3 days. HFY nodded slowly. This is acceptable. In 3 days we fight. If you win, I will tell you everything about this armor. I will tell you things you do not want to know. She paused, her glowing eyes fixed on his face. But you will not win. I am sorry for this. Don't be sorry yet, Dae-ho said. The fight hasn't happened. No, HFY agreed. It has not. But I know how it will end. I have killed many humans, Dae-ho Kim. You will not be the first. You will not be the last. She turned and left the training room without another word. Dae-ho stood alone, his heart racing. He had issued the challenge. There was no taking it back now. He spent the next 3 days preparing. The station had a small gym that catered to human physiology. Dae-ho pushed himself through combat drills, focusing on speed and positioning. He couldn't match HFY's strength. No human could fight a Valtrine in a contest of raw power. But humans had advantages: flexibility, creativity, the ability to adapt mid-fight. Taeyang called on the second day. You actually did it, he said. His face on the video screen looked worried. You challenged a Valtrine champion to single combat. News travels fast. It's all over the station networks. People are placing bets. You're not favored to win, I noticed. Dae-ho wiped sweat from his face. He was in the middle of a training session, his muscles burning with effort. What are the odds? 50 to 1 against you. Someone put down serious money on HFY killing you in under 2 minutes. Encouraging. This is insane, Dae-ho. You know that, right? This is completely insane. I know. Dae-ho sat down on the gym floor, breathing hard. But I have to do it. I have to know, Taeyang sighed. When you get yourself killed, I'm going to be very angry with you. I'll keep that in mind. The night before the fight, Dae-ho couldn't sleep again.
He lay in his rented quarters and thought about Hana, about the way she used to train, the particular style she had developed over years of combat.
She had studied Hapkido before joining the military. It was a Korean martial art focused on joint locks and throws. She used to say that technique beat strength every time. Dae-ho hoped she was right. The challenge took place in one of Threshold Station's public arenas. Word had spread and the stands were full. Humans, Valtrine, and a dozen other species came to watch. Dae-ho tried not to think about the crowd. Tried not to think about the fact that he might die in front of hundreds of strangers. HFY stood in the center of the arena floor when Dae-ho arrived. She wore the armor. Hana's armor. The sight of it made his chest tight. A Valtrine referee explained the rules in multiple languages. The fight would continue until one combatant yielded, died, or was incapacitated. No weapons. No outside interference. Victory through combat alone. Are you ready? The referee asked. Dae-ho nodded. His mouth was dry, but his hands were steady. Are you ready? The referee asked HFY. Yes, she said. Then in Korean that made Dae-ho's blood freeze. I am ready. The referee stepped back. The crowd went silent. For one perfect moment, nothing moved. Then HFY attacked. She was fast. Faster than Deho had expected. Faster than seemed possible for something her size. Her claws raked the air where his head had been a second before. He rolled aside, using his smaller size to stay mobile. HFY pressed the attack. She moved like a storm, all power and precision. But there was something else in her fighting style. Something that didn't match standard Valtrine combat techniques. She feinted left and struck right. A classic misdirection. Deho blocked, but barely. The impact sent him sliding backward across the arena floor. "You are quick," HFY said in Korean. Perfect Korean with no trace of a translator. She taught me to respect quick opponents. Deho's mind reeled. Who was she? He didn't have time to think about it. HFY came at him again, but this time he was ready. He watched her footwork, looking for patterns. And there, in the way she pivoted, in the angle of her approach, he saw it. That was a Hapkido move, a specific technique from a specific school. He knew that technique. He had watched Hana practice it 1,000 times. "How do you know that?" he shouted. HFY didn't answer with words. She answered with movement. She flowed into a spinning arm lock, the kind of move that required precise timing and deep understanding of body mechanics. Deho barely escaped, using a counter that Hana had taught him years ago. For a moment, he and HFY were locked together, faces inches apart. Her eyes burned with that strange yellow light. "Do you remember teaching her that spinning arm lock?" HFY whispered in Korean. "I do." Then she pushed him away and stepped back. The crowd murmured in confusion. This wasn't how Valtrine fights usually went. This wasn't normal. Deho stood frozen. His mind struggled to process what he had heard. Teaching her. Not learning from her. Teaching her. "What are you?" he managed to say. HFY looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something impossible. She lowered her guard completely. She stood with her arms at her sides, vulnerable, waiting. "Strike me," she said in Korean. "Finish the fight." "What?" "Strike me, Deho. You have won." "I yield this match," the crowd erupted. Valtrine didn't yield. It wasn't part of their culture, wasn't part of their honor code. A Valtrine fighter either won or died. There was no middle ground. But HFY stood there, arms at her sides, waiting for a blow that Deho couldn't bring himself to deliver. The referee rushed forward, speaking rapidly in the Valtrine language. HFY replied in the same tongue, her voice hard and final. The referee looked shocked, but he raised Deho's arm in victory. "The human wins by forfeit," the referee announced. "The challenge is complete." The crowd's reaction was chaos. Some cheered. Some protested. The Valtrine in the stands hissed their displeasure. But it was done. Official, binding. HFY removed her helmet. Her reptilian face was alien and strange, but her eyes. Those eyes were looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Meet me in private," she said quietly in Korean. Only he could hear her over the noise. "Room 847 in the diplomatic quarter. Tonight I will tell you everything." "Tell me what?" Room 847 was in the oldest section of the diplomatic quarter. The walls were bare metal, the lighting harsh and functional. Deho stood outside the door for a full minute before he found the courage to knock. "Enter," HFY's voice said from inside. The room was sparse. A table, 2 chairs, a window that looked out at the infinite darkness of space. HFY sat in one of the chairs. She had removed the armor. Without it, she looked different. Smaller somehow, more vulnerable. "Sit," she said in Korean. "Please," Deho sat. His hands rested on the table, fingers pressed flat against the cold surface. He needed something solid to hold on to. "I don't know where to start," HFY said. She stared at her clawed hands. "There is so much, too much. And none of it makes sense, even to me. Start with the armor. Start with how you got it." "I didn't get it. It was given to me. By the person who wore it before." HFY looked up, meeting his eyes. "By Lieutenant Hana Yoon of the Earth Defense Force." The words hit Deho like a physical blow. "That's impossible. Hana died 3 years ago." "No," HFY said softly. "She didn't die. I wish she had. Death would have been kinder. I don't understand." HFY stood and walked to the window. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, "What do you know about neural integration?" "Nothing. I've never heard of it." "Good. Most people haven't. It's classified. Illegal. Something that should never have been created." She turned back to face him. The Valtrine High Command wanted a weapon. Something that could fight humans the way humans fight. Something that could think like you think, adapt like you adapt. They wanted hybrid soldiers. Yes. But Valtrine biology and human biology are not compatible. You cannot simply train a Valtrine to think like a human. The brain structure is too different. So they found another way. HFY touched her head with one claw. They put human consciousness directly into Valtrine bodies. Deho felt sick. That's not possible. It shouldn't be possible. It should kill both subjects, and it did at first. The early experiments were failures. Humans went insane within hours. Valtrine hosts rejected the foreign consciousness and died. It took them many tries to make it work. How many tries? Hundreds. Maybe thousands. I don't know the full count. HFY sat back down heavily, but eventually they succeeded. They found a way to merge human consciousness with Valtrine bodies. The human mind stays intact, aware, trapped inside an alien form. And Hana was one of the subjects. She was one of 17 captured at Proxima Ridge. Only 5 survived the integration process. Of those 5, only 3 retained their sanity. Hana was one of the 3. Deho's vision blurred. He blinked hard, trying to focus. Where is she? Where is Hana now? HFY reached across the table. Her clawed hand covered his. The gesture was gentle, careful not to cut him. Deho, she said quietly. I am HFY. I'm a Valtrine warrior, born on a world you have never heard of. I have memories of my childhood, my training, my battles. These memories are real. They are mine. She paused, her hand still on his. But I am also Hana Yun. I have her memories too. I remember being born in Seoul. I remember joining the Earth Defense Force. I remember you. Her voice cracked slightly. I remember loving you. Deho pulled his hand back like he had been burned. No, that's not possible. I know how it sounds. I know how insane it is. HFY stood and began pacing. 2 minds in one body. 2 sets of memories, 2 personalities, 2 people sharing the same space. We should have destroyed each other. We should have gone mad, but you didn't. No, we made a deal. HFY and Hana. We share control. We take turns. We cooperate because the alternative is death for both of us. She stopped pacing and looked at him. Right now, Hana is in control. She's been waiting 3 years to see you again. Prove it, Deho said. His voice was raw. Prove you're really her. What proof would you accept? I have all of her memories. I know things only Hana would know. She closed her eyes. I know about the scar on your left shoulder, the one you got when you were 12 years old, falling off your bicycle. I know you hate synthetic coffee but pretend to like it because everyone else drinks it. I know that you talk in your sleep and that you always sleep on the left side of the bed. Those things are in records, in files. I know that the last night we were together you asked me to stay. You wanted me to request a transfer, to stay on the station instead of deploying to Proxima Ridge. Her voice was gentle now, sad. I said no. I said I had to go, that it was my duty. And you said you understood even though you didn't, even though you were angry and scared. Deho's throat was tight. He remembered that night. Remembered every word of that conversation. It wasn't in any file. No one knew about it except him and Hana. The last thing you said to me was, come back safe, HFY continued. And I said I always do. And I gave you that stupid lotus charm to keep until I returned. But I never returned, not the way I was. Tears were running down Deho's face. He didn't try to stop them. Hana, it's me. She moved around the table, kneeling beside his chair so their eyes were level. It's really me, Deho. I'm here. I'm alive, just not in the way either of us could have imagined. He reached out slowly, touching her face. The scales were rough under his fingers, alien and wrong. But the way she leaned into his touch, the way her eyes closed, that was Hana. That was real. What did they do to you? He whispered. They took me apart and put me back together wrong. She opened her eyes. The procedure was horrific. I remember all of it. They didn't use anesthetic because they needed the neural pathways active. I felt everything. God, I wanted to die. For months after, I wanted to die. This body was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. I couldn't speak at first. Couldn't control the limbs properly. I was a prisoner in an alien shell, aware of every moment, unable to escape. How did you survive? HFY helped me. The original HFY. The warrior whose body this was. She didn't want this either. She was as much a victim as I was. We were both prisoners, both struggling to exist. She stood up, moving back to her own chair. Eventually, we learned to coexist, to work together, to be something new. Something new, Deho repeated. What does that mean? It means I'm not entirely Hana anymore. I have HFY's instincts, her reflexes, her combat skills. I'm stronger than I ever was as a human, faster, more dangerous. She held up her clawed hands. But I also have human creativity, human empathy, human determination. The combination makes us unique, makes us powerful. Is that why you're undefeated in the arena? Yes, neither human nor Valtrine can fight the way I fight. I have the best of both species. She smiled, but it was a sad expression. The Valtrine High Command calls us their perfect weapons. They're proud of what they created. How many others are there like you? 16. 17 including me. We're scattered across Valtrine territory. Most are kept on tight leashes, forced to fight in the gladiatorial rings or used as special operatives. Some have gone insane. Some have forgotten they were ever human. And you? I pretend to be loyal. I fight when they tell me to fight. I win when they tell me to win. But I'm waiting. Her eyes hardened. We're all waiting. Waiting for the right moment to strike back. Waiting to free ourselves and destroy the people who did this to us. Deho sat back in his chair, his mind struggling to process everything. Why tell me all this? Why take the risk? Because I needed you to know. Because I needed someone from my old life to understand that I'm still here, still fighting. She reached across the table again, but this time she didn't touch him. And because I need your help. Help with what? There's a facility, a research station where they conduct the integration procedures, where they're still trying to perfect the process, where they're holding more human prisoners, waiting to be experimented on. HFY leaned forward. I know where it is. I know how to get inside. But I can't do it alone. You want to rescue them. I want to destroy the entire program. Rescue the prisoners who can be saved. Kill the scientists who did this. Burn the facility to the ground so this can never happen again. Her voice was fierce now, full of rage. They took my life, Deho. They took my body and my future and everything I was going to be. I can't get any of that back, but I can make sure they never do it to anyone else. Deho looked at her, at this impossible fusion of the woman he loved and an alien warrior. At the pain and anger and determination in those glowing yellow eyes. I'll help you, he said. You don't know what you're agreeing to. This will be dangerous, probably fatal, I don't care. If you're really Hana, if any part of you is still her, then I'm helping. That's all there is to it. She was quiet for a moment. Then I'm not the same person you loved. You understand that, right? I can never be that person again. I know. And I don't know if I can love you the way I did before. These emotions, they're complicated, tangled with HFY's feelings. I don't know where I end and she begins anymore. I don't care about that either. Deho stood up. You're alive. You're here, and you need help. That's enough. HFY stood as well. She moved around the table and, before he could react, pulled him into an embrace. It was awkward. Her body was wrong for it, too tall and angular, but he wrapped his arms around her anyway, holding on to this impossible person who was both stranger and lover. The safe house was in the lower levels of Threshold Station, where the air recyclers never quite worked properly, and the lighting flickered at random intervals. Deho had rented it under a false name, paying extra for the kind of privacy that didn't ask questions. HFY arrived 2 hours after sunset, station time. She wore a hooded cloak that hid her distinctive form, but people still gave her a wide berth. Something about the way she moved made their instincts scream danger. Show me everything, Deho said once the door sealed behind her. She pulled a data drive from her belt and plugged it into his terminal. Files began populating the screen. Medical records, research notes, video logs. The sheer volume of information was staggering. This is everything I could steal from the Valtrine medical databases, HFY said. It took me 2 years to gather it all without being detected. Most of it is encrypted, but the basic structure is clear. Deho scrolled through the files. The medical terminology was beyond him, but the diagrams were clear enough. Schematic images of human brains, Valtrine neural structures, overlays showing how they were meant to connect. Project Synthesis, he read aloud from one of the headers. That's what they call it? That's the official name. The scientists involved prefer evolutionary hybridization. They think they're creating the next step in intelligent life. HFY's voice was bitter. They don't see us as people. They see us as test subjects, As tools, Deho opened a video file. The footage showed a laboratory, all white walls and gleaming equipment. On a table in the center lay a human woman. She was unconscious, her head locked in a metal frame. A Valtrine scientist in medical gear stood beside her, manipulating instruments that Deho couldn't identify. "Don't watch that," HFY said quietly. "You don't want to see what comes next." But Deho couldn't look away. The procedure that followed was clinical, precise, and absolutely horrifying. The scientist opened the woman's skull with tools that hummed and sparked. They did the same to a Valtrine subject on an adjacent table. Then came the transfer, the connection, the merging of two minds into one body. The human woman screamed. Even unconscious, even with her brain exposed and connected to alien technology, she screamed. The sound was raw and primal and wrong. Deho closed the file. His hands were shaking. "That was test subject 37, HFY said. She didn't survive. Neither did her Valtrine host. They both died within an hour of integration. How many died before they figured it out? 214 humans. 193 Valtrine. They kept detailed records. They were very proud of their data collection." Deho stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, the station's traffic moved in orderly streams. Normal people living normal lives. None of them knew what was happening in the shadows. "Tell me about your integration," he said. "I need to understand." HFY was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer, more human. "It was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And I was a soldier. I had seen combat. I had been wounded. But nothing compared to that." She sat down in the chair Deho had vacated. "They captured us at Proxima Ridge. 17 of us separated from our unit during the orbital bombardment. We thought they would interrogate us, maybe execute us, standard prisoner of war procedure. But they didn't. No, they took us to a facility. This facility." She gestured at the screen where a building schematic was displayed. "It's on a moon called Calthor in Valtrine space, remote, heavily guarded. Perfect for illegal experiments. What happened when you got there? They separated us, put us in individual cells. We could hear each other screaming during the procedures, but we couldn't see anything. Couldn't help each other." Her claws scraped against the chair's armrest. "I was third. I had to listen to 2 people die before it was my turn." Deho's chest felt tight. "Hana." They strapped me to the table. No anesthetic. They needed the neural pathways active for the integration to work. The lead scientist, a Valtrine named Dr. Velchar, he explained everything they were going to do. He thought I should understand the process. Thought I would appreciate the science of it. What did they do? They cut open my skull and my host's skull simultaneously. Then they used nanobots, millions of them, to map my neural patterns. Every synapse, every connection, every memory. They copied all of it. HFY's voice was distant now, lost in the memory. Then they injected those nanobots into the Valtrine body, into HFY's brain. The bots rewrote her neural structure to match mine. They created new pathways, new connections. They forced our minds to merge. How long did it take? 6 hours. 6 hours of being aware of everything, feeling my body die while my mind transferred, feeling HFY's confusion and rage as her own mind was invaded, feeling the moment when we became one thing instead of 2 separate things. She looked up at Deho. Her eyes were wet, though Valtrine weren't supposed to be able to cry. I died on that table. Hanayun died. My human body shut down and they incinerated it. Everything I was, everything I had been, it only existed as electrical patterns in an alien brain. But you survived. I survived because HFY chose to let me live. She could have fought me, could have rejected the integration and killed us both. But she didn't. She was curious. And she was angry at the people who did this to her. HFY stood and moved to the terminal, pulling up another file. "This is my medical record. See here?" She pointed to a section of text. "Integration compatibility, 92%. That's the highest success rate they've ever achieved. Most hybrids hover around 60 or 70%. Below 50%, both subjects die. What makes you different? They don't know. They've been studying us for 3 years trying to figure it out. They think it has something to do with neural plasticity. Humans have it. Valtrine don't, not to the same degree. But when you combine them, when you merge human adaptability with Valtrine brain structure, you get something new." She pulled up more files, displaying images of the other hybrid warriors. These are my siblings. That's what we call each other. We're not related by blood, but we're related by trauma. Daeho studied the images. 16 faces, all Valtrine. But something in their eyes was different. More expressive. More alive. Kyungsu was in my unit, Kreshava said, pointing to one image. He was captured with me. His integration was only 63% compatible. He's not entirely sane anymore. Most of his human personality is gone. Where is he now? They keep him sedated most of the time. Bring him out for combat trials. He's killed 3 Valtrine researchers who got too close. They consider him a failed experiment. She pointed to another image. Mirai was civilian. An engineer. She had the bad luck of being on a transport that got attacked. Her integration was 87%. She's stable, but she wants to die. She asks for death every day. They won't grant it. One by one, Kreshava went through the list. Each hybrid had a story. Each one was a person whose life had been stolen and twisted into something unrecognizable. How many are kept at the facility? Daeho asked. 7, including Kyungsu and Mirai. The others are scattered across Valtrine space, used as operatives or gladiators. They're watched constantly. Any hint of rebellion and they're brought back for reconditioning. Reconditioning? Memory suppression. They can dampen the human consciousness, make the Valtrine personality dominant. It's temporary, but it's effective. Most hybrids have been reconditioned at least once. Have you? No, I've been careful. I pretend to be loyal. I win my fights. I follow orders. They think I'm fully integrated, fully compliant. They don't know I've been gathering information, planning. Daeho sat back down, his mind working through the implications. If we raid this facility, they'll know you were involved. You'll lose your cover. I know. But I don't care anymore. I've spent 3 years pretending to be their weapon. I'm done. She closed the files and removed the data drive. Besides, once we expose what they're doing, my cover won't matter. The entire project will be under scrutiny. What about the other hybrids? The ones scattered across Valtrine space? That's the hard part. We can rescue the 7 at the facility. But the others, I don't know where they all are. And even if I did, we can't reach them all. So we rescue who we can and expose the rest. Yes. Release all of this data to human authorities, to the media. Make it public. Force the Valtrine to answer for what they've done. Daeho looked at the terminal screen where the building schematic still glowed. How many guards? 50 to 60 at any given time. Plus automated defenses. It's designed to keep the hybrids contained, but it also keeps unauthorized personnel out. We'll need a team. People with military experience. People who can fight, I know. I've been thinking about that. Kreshava pulled up another file. There's a human admiral named Jiwon Seo. She's been supplying the program with captured soldiers, selling them to the Valtrine in exchange for technology and political favors. A human is doing this? Yes, she's not the only one, but she's the highest ranking. If we can prove her involvement, it will show that this conspiracy goes beyond just the Valtrine. Daeho felt sick. How many people has she sold? At least 40 over the past 5 years. Maybe more. The records are incomplete. We need to stop her.